Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I am Emma. I am a bookseller at Belmont Books located in Belmont, Massachusetts. We are a small independent bookstore. And so let me just tell you about a few events we have coming up. So next week we have Jesse Satananto, I can't read, in conversation with Uzma Jahalaludin, and they're talking about romance books and all that, and that's awesome. And then next Thursday, I am hosting the monthly bedtime story time where we have three different children's books authors come and read their stories. And so that's always a lot of fun. So be sure to check those out. We're so excited about this event, though. We've got Hillary, we've got Becca, and we're so excited to talk about Hillary's book. So let me tell you a little bit about them before. Oh, first of all, if you have any questions for the authors, feel free to leave them in the chat. Or we also have at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A option, and you can leave a question there as well. Feel free to do wherever you please. But so now, a little bit about Hillary. So she's from Fort Collins, Colorado. She grew up in an outdoorsy and scientific family who not only encouraged her to pursue a career in science, but also sport. She earned a master's degree in neuroscience and physiology and structural biology from the University of Colorado. During her graduate studies, Hillary also discovered trail running and ultra running. Her passion for the outdoors quickly led to success on the trails, where she became a sponsored mountain runner for North Face. Along with her professional running and racing career, Hillary also teaches chemistry, biology, anatomy, and physiology part-time at a small college outside of Boulder, Colorado. She also coaches other runners, again, using her love for athletics and her physiology background. And then a little bit about Becca. Becca lives in Belmont, Massachusetts with her husband and 12-year-old daughter. Having been the first American female to run the World Marathon Challenge in 2016, 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days, Becca went back and made history by running it again and breaking the world record. 6 days, 7 hours, and 58 minutes. Her current goal is to complete a marathon in all 50 states. And she was saying how she's already got like around 30, which is awesome. So now without further ado, I will hand the event over to Hillary and Becca. So enjoy.
All right, so I have about 10 questions that I would love to ask Hillary, and then we can go on from there. Hillary, so what is sky racing exactly, and how does it differ from ultra marathons?
Yeah, so thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here with you and talk about my book. So sky running. So I kind of got into the deep end of ultra running, and I discovered this niche in the sport of trail and ultra running, and it's called sky running. So trail running is anything that's like off of the tarmac, off of the road. And most of the time when you're trail running, you're running on a trail in the mountains, and so it has some elevation gain. But these races can, range in technicality, and there's a lot of variation. But I discovered this type of running called sky running, which was basically the steepest terrain and probably the most technical terrain that you can imagine. It's so a typical race would be about a 50-kilometer race, about 30 miles. And it gains about 12,000 to 14,000 feet. So it's basically like straight up the mountain, and then maybe you like run on a ridge for a while and then you go straight down. So yeah, these are really awesome races. They've taken me all over the world. There's some in the US, but a lot of them are in Europe, where you can start at the sea level and then go all the way up to these super tall mountains.
So
Yeah.
is it like the same do you see the same competition, or you just have no idea who you're racing against, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. So I was competing on this thing called the Sky Running Series. So there's a US series. There's also a series in Asia. There's a series in Europe, but there's also this World Sky Running Series. And so it's different races from all over the world. Combined into this like series and like a point system. So in the summertime, I would teach at a college, and then in the summer I would just pack my bags and move to Europe, and I'd race about like 6 races in the course of like 4 months.
Mm.
Um, So it's pretty intense. So it depended on which race you were at, but you could kind of see like, the same kind of competition. It's like you're on like a world circuit. So, you could kind of size up the competition. It was really funny because it's like I would, battle it out with some strong ladies. Sometimes I'd win, sometimes they'd win. But yeah, you're kind of traveling around with your little family and, seeing the same, but also like, local crushers, every now and again that surprise you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So walk me through your accident in Norway. What happened?
Yeah, so I hit it hard in chapter 1 in the book. I This is kind of what started the whole story that I'm writing about. So I was on this, sky running world series event, and one of the places that it took me to was this place in Norway. And I had never been to Norway. I'd never been that far north. It's this beautiful place called Tromsø, Norway, and it's in the Arctic Circle. And in Norway, you have these iconic peaks that's, you start from the fjords and then you run up on these beautiful granite ridge lines. And this is the type of like running that I love to do. It's technical. It's a third class. So you basically have to put a hand down to kind of like you've got 2 feet and you put like a hand down to like stabilize yourself. Fourth class is if you're kind of using all your both hands and both feet to kind of go on the terrain. But basically this race is called the Humperocken Sky Race. And you go on this iconic peak, Humperocken Ridge, the midway point during the race. And at this point, I was actually ranked number 1 in the world in the skyrunning Ultra World Series. And so this race was just kind of a cherry on the top. Like even if I had a bad performance, it wasn't going to hurt my ranking. And so it was really like a victory kind of lap, so to speak. And I remember having a great day, feeling really strong as I was kind of reaching that ridge line and enjoying the terrain. And I remember seeing people that I knew, like photographers out on the course. And then I rounded this corner, and the next thing I knew, I was in the air. And it was just something that happened so instantly where I was running 1 minute, enjoying everything, and then the next, I didn't even have time to brace myself because it just happened so fast that I was just airborne. And yeah, it was in total, I ended up falling 150 feet. And I still remember it quite vividly. In fact, it's still a dream that I have of me almost observing myself falling as I impacted the side of the mountain and kind of prepared myself for potentially, I thought I was dying. And yeah, then from there, kind of the whole rescue operation began. It involved like a helicopter rescue to the hospital. And yeah, I mean, my life was changed in literally one instant.
Yeah, and I can't imagine what was going through your mind falling down a mountain. Like I just can't even grasp that. And then I
Yeah.
read that the helicopter medical team couldn't even get to where you were, and that just had to have been totally scary.
Yeah, and it was weird because I do remember a few snippets. So when I was falling, I do remember like the impact, although I don't remember the pain. But as soon as I woke up, when I had finished falling and there was some people, hustling around me, it was like the world was almost pulsing.
Mhm.
And I felt the pain and I could recognize faces and I could see the fear in their eyes. And I could, I was scared that I was, going to die. And I remember one of the most uncomfortable feelings was I had to be hoisted onto a cot to be airlifted. And this helicopter was hovering around us for what seemed like days. It was only a couple hours, but people had to protect me because they were from the wind, the rocks were, being kind of propelled down from the turbulence from the helicopter, like the chopper wings. And yeah, and then, being hoisted up on the cot to the safely to the helicopter, it felt like I was falling again. And it was, I still remember that sensation.
Yeah. And what about your recovery? I know that you had to move from your home, and who helped you and supported you during these times?
Yeah, so when I think actually I was, in the hospital in Norway for about 10 days. And the first 2 days I was a total blur. Kind of after I was in the hospital, and I remember the doctor saying to me that, you're okay, you're going to survive, like you don't have any internal bleeding. After that, I really don't remember anything until my mother came. She actually flew to Norway, to Tromsø. Actually, North Face, got her a plane ticket to fly out to me. Um, yeah, they were incredibly supportive. And she didn't arrive, of course, until 2 days later. And everything up until that point was a blur. I think I was just a mix of painkillers, unable to move, just an incredible amount of swelling. And yeah, when she came, I remember I had to have some more surgeries to reset the bones in my wrists. And it was devastating. I mean, I was at literally my peak athletic performance, and I was unable to move from the hospital bed, even to go to the bathroom. I had a catheter because like I was just too much of a falling risk. I had broken for a total of 14 bones. And so yeah, like luckily it wasn't my legs, which miraculously I have no idea how that happened, but both of my wrists were broken. My back in two places. I had 5 ribs, 3 on one side, 2 on the other. Both of my feet were broken, and both ankles were severely twisted. Somehow, as I was like tomahawking down the ridge, both of my shoes fell off, which I don't know how it's possible, because I know you probably for a race, you tie your shoes really tightly, you don't want them falling off. So somehow those were off of my feet. So my feet were in really bad shape. And I had just like cuts all over me. And so I couldn't move. And those first days, I felt not only the strength kind of drain out of me, but just my motivation. And I remember actually this really nice Norwegian nurse saying to me, because I hadn't moved out of the hospital bed for 5 days.
Mhm.
And she could see that I was just kind of like losing hope. And that 5th day, I remember her coming to me and saying, like, this, you have to fight. Like, this, you can't just give up. And I remember she helped me to get to the side of the bed, and then to the chair next to the hospital bed to eat breakfast that day. And then from there, I kind of took with my mother little like walks around the hospital. Um, sat out on like a little, what I could, like I was kind of in a wheelchair slash like walking kind of apparatus. But just trying to like, literally it was all the strength I had one day just to walk like 10 paces down the hall. And so I wasn't able to go actually home to the United States until about 10 days after the initial injury. And it was really complicated. In fact, North Face, they had to fly in a private jet to Tromsø because I couldn't walk. And the little airplanes that they had in this small airport weren't wide enough, the door for like a wheelchair apparatus to get me on. And so I had, like, thankfully North Face had, they're owned by Vanity Fair, and they have kind of a fleet of, their company is based in Switzerland. And so they're able to fly a private jet there. This is my first time ever on like a private jet, first class flight. And of course, I can't enjoy it. I'm literally just, like strapped in and like laying on this little, like, this this fancy like couch thing that's in the middle of this airplane. And yeah, then I connected in Munich, and again, like I had this incredible like, fleet of people helping me like, wheelchair me around. And then once I got back home to Colorado, my sister's a nurse, and so she had arranged all of these doctor's appointments for me, and I was able to stay at her house when I underwent like 3 more surgeries to fix my wrists again because they were kind of healing improperly. And one of the most devastating injuries actually was diagnosed in Norway. And not only was my foot broken, but I had a major ligament fracture in my right foot, which had to have surgery. And that was when kind of the whole recovery took another change, because I was told that I probably would not run again.
Who called your parents?
So yeah, this was actually the most terrifying thing, that from perspective of my mother, she had followed my races. Sometimes her and my father were able to kind of meet me, in Europe to watch some of these sky races or cheer for me. But because it was in Norway, they were, following along online. And so, you pass these little checkpoints, and the race kind of reports, okay, like Hillary's through this point, and they kept on seeing that I hadn't arrived. And then they found out that someone had like fallen or had been in an accident, and they weren't releasing my name just because they knew that my parents were watching. So actually, Emily Forsberg, she's a pretty famous trail and ultra runner, her and her partner Killian Jornet are the race directors. So Emily, she actually called my mother to let her know what happened.
Wow, that was going through my mind. And then
Yeah.
the other thing that I took away from it was, as a professional athlete, you must be totally have stressed out of what are my sponsors going to do. And the fact that they supported you and flew out a private plane, like that's awesome. That's just totally awesome.
I know. And it was definitely a fear of mine, because I had never been injured like this before. And I think it was also, the North Face, I mean, it's a big brand, but the trail running team and the athlete team is such a close-knit family. And I think that, they were just so concerned for my well-being and my health that they were so incredibly supportive. And that was, they were a huge source of strength even throughout my recovery. Just other members on the athlete team, my athlete manager at the time, Maeve Sloan. Yeah, it was just, I was incredibly grateful, and just, I felt like loved because of that extra effort that they put in.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. Tell me about your comeback. Where did you even begin?
Yeah, so actually it's so hard. I mean, I don't know. It was definitely from day one. Because it's like putting into grips kind of like, okay, what do I do? I mean, first of all, I was so grateful that I was alive, but there's so many other emotions. And, as an athlete, I mean, I'm sure you can relate. Your identity is like wrapped up in this thing that you love so much, but it's also something you love to do. But, and then for me, from a professional athlete standpoint too, it's like, there's also a job and an obligation part to it. And so honestly, those first 3 months after my foot surgery, I was on a scooter, and I couldn't bear weight on it for 3 months. And so I kind of had to put my everything on pause. I just wanted to focus on healing. And at that point, I was just trying to take it one day at a time. But at the back of my mind, I was still holding on to this belief that, okay, like I can do this. It's hard, and I don't know how, but like once I can start to walk again and see how that's like, I'm not losing hope. But there was still this, this loss of identity, this despair, because I didn't know what to do. And, even when I one of the main things that I, started doing early on was physical therapy. And as soon as I was able, I was in the gym. And now my physical therapist, Matt Smith, he's like my family. And, I was there, he was there for me, in the tears and the happiness and the ups and the downs, the sideways, every direction that my recovery went. But I started there. At, I started in a gym, in a PT, doing, not even things that, runners are just like, what? Like, I'm going to do leg lifts. Like, what am I doing? But I took it from there. And then, it was cool to see the progress as I was able to kind of get out of the cast and then start to walk again, and slowly but surely, get enough confidence to run. And actually, I took my first running steps about 5 or 6 months after falling off that cliff. And it wasn't, I think it was 30 seconds, 30 seconds. And then I like walked, and then I ran for like 30 seconds or a minute again. And then I walked. And just that little bit was kind of just like, oh my gosh, I think that's then what kind of ignited me to the next step of like, okay, like I'm going to get back to running.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
So do you approach life and running differently post-accident? Did you ever consider not coming back to pro racing to put yourself out there again after coming so close to death and not calling it done? How did you talk yourself into going back to sky racing?
Yeah. So that's an interesting question because it was something I struggled with. After that moment where I started running again, and kind of easing back into just the motion of running and getting my body strong enough to take that, I still had a lot of doubts. I had no idea if I was going to be able to return back to running trails, to running technical trails like sky running, let alone going back to kind of an elite level of competition. And so what I literally, I had to let go of that. I had to completely let go of this identity that I am or could return back to who I was. And that sounds sad, but it was so liberating for me because it allowed me to just to love running just for running, and to understand that running was far more important to me than any single competition. And that's kind of what started this beautiful process and what allowed me the strength to just run for the sake of running. And even though my recovery was still not straightforward, I had to get another surgery in my foot to remove these screws that had broken. And my foot was still painful. I had to deal with a lot of setbacks in the recovery process. It was far from linear and far from perfect, but it was something that I was unwilling to give up. And I remember actually this moment. It was, about 10 or 11 months after my injury, so almost a year. And I had been training a lot. I had been, doing a lot of things, and Strava, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't know about Strava. Like, I knew Strava, but I didn't use it.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not confident. I was like running a lot. And my coach at the time, Adam St. Pierre, was like, all right, Hill, he's like, I'm going to convince you that you're ready. Like, you're ready to start racing again. So he like signed me up for Strava, like linked my GPS watch to it. He didn't even give me the password to it. So he was monitoring the thing. And occasionally after a run, he would just start sending me these screenshots of like the Strava thing of like me getting like crowns or like a top 10. And I was like, wait, what? Are you sure that's me? And he's all like, see, Hill, like you're ready. Like, so that was kind of the other thing where I was like, okay, maybe I should start thinking like, do I want to do a competition again? And then Adam, it wasn't until I was like really far into my recovery. And Adam told me, he's like, just rip off the Band-Aid, just, do a race, start with a vertical kilometer, which, ironically, the first race that my coach was like, you need to get back out there and do it, was a sky race. And so it was this race out in Squaw. So in California, it's called the Broken Arrow Sky Race. And so it's a 52-kilometer race. I forget how much vertical gain it has, like 12,000 feet, something like this. And it's at altitude. It's right at the base of Squaw Valley, so a ski resort. And they also had this other event that was called a vertical kilometer. It's basically just a only uphill race. You climb 1,000 meters in less than 5 kilometers longitudinally. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna do that because I don't have to worry about the downhill. I'll just focus on the uphill. I mean, my nickname's Hilly Goat anyway, so it worked out. And I was so nervous, but like I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna do it. Doesn't matter where I place. I'm just gonna do it for fun. And I ended up getting second place, like 30 seconds off of like this really strong like vertical kilometer specialist. And so the next day I did the 52-kilometer race. And I think I got sixth place, and I cried a bunch because actually one of the photographers that was at the race in Tromsø when I fell, she was there at the top of the climb, like at the highest point of the race, kind of documenting.
Yeah.
And so when I saw her, I just like lost it. But yeah, that was just kind of the beginning of it. It's just like taking a step. And then when I finished the race, like I didn't care that I didn't win. I didn't care that I wasn't on the podium. I was just so happy to be running again.
Yeah.
And then the next week I had happened to be in Italy because I was there for a North Face event, like a speaker series. And I joined my favorite 50-kilometer race and I ended up winning it. And then I think that's like, where the kind of the quote unquote comeback starts.
Ah,
I know, like it's lots of stories there, but it's just yeah.
Journey. So what advice do you have for those facing challenges and you hear that the comeback is greater than the setback? Do you believe in that?
Yeah. And so this is I think this is like the meat and potatoes of my book. I think this is why I wanted to write a book, because I 100% think that challenges are there to make us stronger. They're there for us to learn from. And no matter how impossible they may seem, there are ways around and ways through and ways to become a more well-balanced and better person at the end of it. And that's not to say that it's, straightforward. I mean, certainly my story isn't just, over because I overcame, this injury recovery. I mean, it's ongoing. But it's so cool to be able to see and discover the inner strength that I had, but I had no idea that I possessed it. And this challenge was incredible. And I had no idea if I was going to be able to overcome it, but I just, ticked away at it, one day at a time. And yeah, my book it's about that. It's about inviting others to use the challenges in their life to just learn from them and to, discover that strength that you didn't know you had, but it was there all along.
What's your motto?
So I think that there's several of them. One of my favorite chapters in the book is the chapter on belief. And one of my mantras that I literally had to write down pretty much daily was believe that your best athletic days are ahead of you.
I love that.
And I think you can even, pick out athletic and say, just believe your best days are ahead of you. And it's something that I didn't believe every day, kind of at the surface level. I was just like, oh, this feels so silly. Like I can't walk right now and I can't even run. What am I going to do? But, deep down inside of me, I had that belief.
Yeah.
And even though I felt those things on a surface level from day to day, they still wouldn't prevent me from showing up and, doing my PT or, doing what I could that day to still kind of, I don't know, water that belief and cultivate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what was it like to stand on the podium at UTMB? That must have been an unbelievable feeling.
Yeah. So I did this race. It was my longest. This was such a special race. So it was a TDS at part of the UTMB race series. And it was literally my longest race that I have ever done in my entire running career. And it was 2 years after my accident.
Mhm.
And actually, it was so incredible. And I think what gave me the courage to kind of do this race was a few weeks earlier, I had actually gone back to Tromsø and that completed the race that had nearly killed me. And so I was just like, I can do anything. Like, yeah, that was super hard. And I know that this race is going to be insane. But I can do it. And it was incredible. It was 92 miles through the Alps, the French Alps, the Italian and French Alps. It had 30,000 feet of gain and 30,000 feet of descending. I ran for 22 hours and had one of the most, I think, thrilling and exciting kind of competitions of my entire running career. I literally battled it out with this woman for the whole race, and I only finished about 2 minutes, or no, wait, I forget how many minutes, 8, I think a total of 8 minutes behind her in like a 22-hour race, which is like nothing. Um, and yeah, I think literally the first thing I said when I crossed the finish line was I just like thanked my mom and I like because I knew she was watching. But yeah, it was such a special moment. It was just one of those things of kind of the culmination of all of my hard work and just being so incredibly grateful that I didn't give up on myself
Mhm.
and that I kept on, just trying and believing that I could run again and that I would run again. And the irony in it all is that I honestly, like, even if I didn't reach the podium on that race, I still would have been just as proud. Um, so it was just kind of like, the cherry on top.
That's awesome. Where did you get the nickname Hilly Goat?
Yeah, so actually it's so funny. It was from an ex-boyfriend, in fact. I was in graduate school and I had just discovered trail running. Like it was this whole new world. It's like cue the, Aladdin music. But it was yeah, it was just this incredible, like I was just discovering trail running. I was going to school at CU, so Boulder was nearby, and it was like iconic for trail running. And I remember going. I had kind of just started dating this guy, and he was an avid trail runner. Like he had run 100-mile races, and I had like no idea that trail running was even a thing. And I was just kind of doing it for fun, and I had this knack. And so I remember him and his friend and his girlfriend, we all went on a run together, and we went on this really tough run in Boulder, like to link up some of the tallest peaks, like Green Mountain, Bear Peak, and South Boulder Peak. And I remember I was just like, okay, hell, like it's okay. Like if you're tired, it's fine. Like they'll wait for you. But I ended up just like going, and I was just kind of like talking, and I got really into it. And then I turned around once I reached the summit, and like everyone was behind me. And I'm like, wait, what? And so then that was where it was born. Like these guys were like, what the heck? Like, who are you, the Hilly Goat? And so it just kind of stuck from there.
I love that. And I also love in the book, that kind of reminded me of the guy that gave you the shirt off his back, literally.
Yes,
So
yes.
that was one of my favorite parts of the book too.
Aw, I'm so glad. Yeah. I know the
So
trail running
yeah,
community is like, it's so nice.
it really is. What's next for you?
Yeah. So, I think everyone has kind of had to shift and, kind of ask themselves that question a lot, especially, this past year and even into this year. I think racing, is going to happen. But for me, I've actually loved the opportunity of exploring my home trails. I have this goal of Everesting Green Mountain. It's a local peak here, and it's frequented. It mentioned a lot in the book. Is where I kind of did a lot of my recovery. It holds sentimental value. I've never really done that on foot before. I also have several. I really love gravel bike racing, and so I'm gonna do a couple of races of those. UTMB is also on my list, and just yeah, just trying to be creative with yeah, just with the races that I want to do, engaging in the community. I'm also kind of planning to do a little book tour in a van that I'm renting. We're
How can
calling
we
it.
spell that?
Wait, what?
How can we follow that?
Yeah, so it'll be on my Instagram. So it's not going to happen for probably until the beginning of June, and I'm first going to the West Coast. So I'm hoping to make it out to the East Coast either later this summer or in the fall. It's a little bit longer of a drive, so I might have to figure that out. But yeah, you can follow it along on my Instagram, Hilly Goat Climbs, and also on my website, which is hillaryallen.com. But yeah, I'm gonna do it in advance. So I'm calling it the Unconventional Book Tour, and I cannot take credit for the name. Mary Arnold, she's a friend of mine. She's brilliant, and she came up with that name.
Awesome. I love that. That sounds so fun.
Yeah.
So those are my questions. And then, there's so many lessons and takeaways from this book. And I just wanted to go through some of them, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was just so moved by your book, the mental and physical toughness. What happens when you can't train anymore? Like all of a sudden, next day you can't run, you can't train, when your sport ability are taken away, and how you wrote that being honest with how you're really feeling saved you and put you on the path to survival. I thought that was really awesome. I love that you wrote, runners come in all builds, no matter the size and shape of the body. Being a runner is simply running, and that your strength and build saved your life during the accident.
Yeah, that was such an interesting part too, because like that was a realization. I mean, you've read the book. I've read a super honest part about, body image and sport. And yeah, it was something that I really was grateful to write about, is like celebrating the strength that, each person has, whether that's physical, or mental. And I think it's a really, yeah, it was just kind of another realization that I had along the way.
I love that part. And one of my favorite chapters is Just Keep Showing Up, and Perfectly Perfect, about building a foundation out of a brick house. Placing each brick meant progress. Show up for others and they will show up for you. You taught integrated science to college students, and you applied details to your accident to generate real life examples to scientific laws of motion. The students must have loved learning from you that there is so much science behind running. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, so actually this is so funny. So basically I couldn't actually drive because I had, fractured my right foot, and that's my driving foot. And so I actually had to hire a car service. This is, once I got back, so like literally 3 weeks after my accident, I had hired this car service to take me to the small college outside of Boulder where I taught, Front Range Community College, and to teach my class. And that year I was teaching anatomy and physiology and intro to physics. And
Wow.
so, like I'm a professor signing, like showing up with the scooter and like the textbooks in my basket. And like, I'm, like, they're like, who is this girl? And so, I had told them the story, and I was like, well, lesson number one in my anatomy class, I was like, let's go, here's, the bones in the body. Let's identify the ones that I broke in my fall. And then, in my physics class, we learned about the Newton's laws, first, second, and third laws. And I was kind of using, my accident on a test question was like, calculate my terminal velocity if I'm a woman of this mass, falling this, this far. So yeah, I was trying to, I don't know, use it as a learning moment and
I love that.
moment, I guess. Yeah.
That's so fun for them. That's so lucky that they were able to learn from you.
And I think they definitely, at least, no one got that wrong on the exam. So
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
yeah.
I love that you wrote, the mind is the strongest part of an athlete. It's not the legs, lungs, or heart, but the mind. Strength comes from how an athlete handles pressure, pain, and problem solving when the mind goes south. Patience takes practice, and injuries require extreme patience. Embrace the unknown. Extra time being injured is a gift, and you will land on your feet. Honor and respect the process.
Yeah, that was actually another one of, I love that. There's a whole chapter on honor the process. And yeah, it's basically just about that, is that it's not straightforward, and that it's not, linear, and it's unpredictable. And for someone like me who really likes to plan and for things to be predictable, I'm sure it's like for you too. You have a race plan, you have a training plan, and you go through it day by day, and then that's how you accomplish your goals. It's how it works, right? And recovery wasn't like that. And it sometimes took every single ounce of me to, to be able to just have the motivation to get on my scooter and, go down the street to my favorite coffee shop, which, seemed crazy because I was used to running for hours on end each day. And it was just kind of a different perspective, just to slow down the pace and to really, just to really experience life in a new way and have it feel just as meaningful, even if I wasn't as kind of physically able.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, embrace the unknown. I think that's really important. I really love reading that. And then lastly, the last chapter in your book was that you follow 2 rules in life. Don't huck anything, and don't talk about food until the last 5K of a race, which I can totally relate to because I'm always hungry.
Right? I know. And it's actually a game changer, because it's like, if you've ever been on a run with someone and like they're start immediately talking about food, I'm just like, okay, like we can talk about this. Like I stop it right now. Like we can talk about this, like when we're 5K from the end. But also this is tricky, because if you're trail running, 5K from the end can be anywhere from like an hour to like 30 minutes. So it can get tricky if you start to bonk. And so I've also applied this rule to cycling. So you cannot talk about food until the last 30 minutes of the ride. And I think actually I added one more rule. And the third rule is just don't talk about weather, because if you talk about weather, something's bound to happen.
Yeah, that's true, especially in New England here. We all know that.
Exactly. But like the first rule is pretty good, and that actually came from the accent, don't huck anything. So I will not be, jumping cliffs or anything on skis, bike, running. No.
Don't do it. So this is the book, and I hope that you all support Hillary. The book is awesome. I wrote to you like a few times during the book, just telling you where I was and how awesome and inspiring. It's just so relatable on so many levels. So I hope that you all support Hillary and purchase the book. And
look, I have your book here too. Actually, it was so funny. It was perfect timing. I got it this morning, and yeah, it's wonderful. And I mean, the cool thing is that, Belmont Books is the bookstore that published this book.
They launched my book.
And this is like your local bookstore. It's your hometown. I just love that so much.
Yeah, thanks. They've been really supportive. I really feel fortunate. So if any of you guys have, I see some questions. I don't know how to answer the questions.
Yes, that's fine. I can read them. Okay. That's totally fine. Okay. So we have a question, first of all, from Julia, who sent this like right at the very beginning. It's a question for you, Becca. She's wondering if the marathon at the North Pole is still on. How do you train for a marathon in sub-zero temperatures, and what kind of gear will you be wearing?
So when I went and ran Antarctica, it was -20 degrees. It was really, really cold. Being from Boston, it was like 0 degrees here. So I flew to, I would drive to Canada and run in like the sub-negative temperatures. So the reason why I've never run North Pole Marathon, it's always Boston Marathon weekend. And so it is happening in 2022, but it's probably going to be very close to the Boston Marathon weekend. And I've run 17 consecutive Boston marathons. So I don't want to break my streak for anything, but I've had my eye on the North Pole Marathon for a long time. And I'm just drawn to these, like Hillary, just drawn to these ultimate tests of endurance and strength runs. As far as gear, I don't know. It hits -50. So I don't know what I'm going to do. But I went to EMS and they suited me up for some gear called the Summit series, which they climb Everest in. So I'm hoping to try on that and hope that it works well.
Geez. And like, I was going to say, it's like, we had some minus 15 degrees here in Boulder, and I had to run in like 2 pants, and like I was like freezing. I don't know. I mean, I should introduce you to Dean Carnassus. He can help you. Like you tape your face up. I see people doing that.
Yeah, I've seen. And that's what I think. It's just talking to people that have been there in those situations, like run those kind of races before. But Dean has a couple awesome books out too. He's so funny, like ordering people.
Actually, it's funny. Another book that just came in the mail yesterday was Runner's High, his new book. So
he's so funny. He's another great guy.
Yeah.
We have another question. And by the way, everyone in the audience, feel free to ask in the chat, or we also have a Q&A button, which I'm going to read from. So Mary asks, have you, and this is to both of you, I assume, have you ever run a traditional 26.2 mile marathon? If so, what was your best time?
Do I go?
Sure.
Yes. So actually, when I first started running in graduate school, so like I said, I went to CU, but the campus was based in Denver. And so I first started running in a city. And so I got hooked up with this local run club that was like a half mile from my house. And so I was running on roads. And so this woman, Janie Day, who she's a legend, but she was actually a part of the Reebok team back in the day in the 80s. She was in her like mid 50s when I met her. And so she trained me for my first marathon. And I ran the California International Marathon the year that it was like a torrential downpour, and there was literally like 6 inches of standing water in every intersection. So that was my first road marathon running experience, and I ran a 3:15. And then I wasn't satisfied with that, so I did my own, like an unsanctioned marathon, loops around Washington Park in Denver, and I ran a 2:51. And then after that, I did not want to run on the road anymore. And the trail runner was born. So and of course, Becca, you have run many marathons.
Yeah, I'm like yeah. So I just ran my 81st marathon, and pretty much have only run on the road. So
Oh my gosh.
when I
But see,
finished it,
that's another just feat of strength. Like, I don't know.
I'd like to do an ultra. I definitely, maybe you can help me. Maybe I can reach out to
Yes.
ultra tips, but I would love to do an ultra when I finish the 50 states.
After you do, call me up. We will run on some trails. I
That
will
sounds
show you.
fun.
You'll have no problem doing an ultra.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, we have a question from Sue. First of all, Sue in the comments says, Hillary, you are amazing.
Oh, thank you,
And
Sue. So are you.
and she says, Hillary, how do you train for sky running, and do you need any special equipment for sky racing?
Yeah, so for me, I'm lucky that I live in Boulder, so there are some pretty steep trails here. And it's kind of just I not only do I love it, but it's also kind of my bread and butter to go on steep terrain. But one of the biggest things that I always want to say, and Becca, this will be interesting for you too to know about trail running, is that there's this thing called power hiking. So you don't always have to run uphill. And the steeper it gets and the rockier it gets, the more useful a strong power hike is. And so I'll go on these long runs, and, I'll mix them up between running, like runnable trails, or really steep trails where you kind of have to power hike. Up to these peaks. But usually to prepare for a sky running, I train by hours, so a certain hours a week of kind of running, just because on trails it takes so much longer. That'll be anywhere from like 50 miles to 80 miles on a trail, but that'll sometimes be like 15 hours to like 25 hours. So it's like there's a big range. But usually when I'm training for a steep sky running race, I do a lot of vertical, so like up and down these peaks. But to me, that's my favorite, because I love summiting peaks and like seeing just the views. I usually love to do it for sunrise. And it's like the best way to start the day. But yeah, I think that was the question.
Yeah. And then we have another question from Peter this time, and it's to both of you. When you start to run at any race, how long does it take you to get your body into proper running mode?
Becca, do you want to start?
I think the key is just to not go out fast, so you're containing yourself in the beginning, and when you head to the starting line, I typically have two goals. Like, one would happen on a perfect day, and then a backup goal in case that perfect day is not going off so well. But I think for me, I already have envisioned so many times crossing the finish line, what that's going to feel like. And if we're running about 100 miles a week, maybe 70 to 100 miles a week, then we have high mileage and we know what to expect and when we'll be feeling. But I think for me, just don't go out fast, try to run negative splits and try to stay focused, in your hydration and your warm up and everything that you do from the night before the race to crossing the finish line.
I love that, like the visualization. I think that's super important. And so I couldn't agree more that starting too fast is probably the worst thing that you could do in an ultra marathon. But it's really funny. Like I actually, so, it's an ultra marathon race. Like I actually don't warm up. Like I don't go for like a jog, maybe for like, a couple minutes or something like this. But, I'll definitely do stretching, or I have like a morning routine kind of just to wake up my body. But for me, it's like Becca said, it's if you're used to running, just the point for me is just running where you're comfortable. So I like to use, I run by feel, heart rate and feel, but I can definitely feel if I'm, exerting too much of an effort. So it's kind of like the talk test, like a nice conversational pace. Something that I know, because if I'm gonna, for an ultra marathon, I'll be running for 6 hours at the shortest, distance that I'm running. So it's really important, to put myself in a good position and knowing that I still have something in the tank. But absolutely, it's I've experienced the bonk from starting out too fast, and it is not fun. But yeah.
Awesome. Thank you both. This is from Douglas. Visiting Boulder in August. What is the best trail for a nice Sunday long run?
Ooh, that's such a good question. I mean, you just have to link all of them. So it's got to be the Boulder Skyline Traverse. You just have to link all the peaks. Yeah. So Boulder Skyline Traverse, you can do it. I would suggest doing it from south to north. So you start at the South Mesa Trailhead. You go up Shadow Canyon, which is my favorite trail ever, up to South Boulder Peak. Then you go to Bear Peak, then over to Green Mountain. And then you have to dip down, then go all the way up Mount Sanitas. Well, you hit Flagstaff Peak in there too. That's number 4. And then the 5th peak is Sanitas. And then, yeah, then you have to, do a car shuttle or, stop at a brewery or like a place to get some food and recover. It's so beautiful because you get to kind of, do the skyline of Boulder and tag all the peaks that everyone's talking about.
That sounds delightful. I'm not a runner, but I'm just thinking of the views and I'm like, wow, nice.
You could do it as a hike too. Lots of people do it as a hike. It's awesome.
Okay, good to know. We've got another question from Sue, who is just wondering, Hillary, did you run on your high school and or college teams?
That's a great question, Sue. So my family comes from, like, we're very active. Typical like outdoorsy Colorado family. I grew up, I always joke, like I grew up in the dirt. We were always like camping. So my dad actually he's from Britain, and he was a really talented runner. In fact, his marathon PR, he's 76 now. So when he was 20, he ran 2:28. So that was really good at that time. And so he's the runner. And actually my older sister was a super good runner. So she was like, she was the one who was going to pursue running. So I kind of did like 5Ks when I was younger, part of like these little like cruisers group that was from my like, elementary school. I did like the local 5Ks to, win a turkey or something for Thanksgiving for my mom, like the turkey trot. But my sister was always faster than me. She didn't have any coordination, so she couldn't play ball sports, but I had coordination. So instead of running, I took up ball sports. And actually I earned a scholarship to play tennis in college. So I use running as just kind of like, suicide drills or like, just a way to stay in shape for tennis. But it wasn't until actually grad school that I used running just because it was the most efficient use of my time. All I needed was a pair of shoes and, I could just go out my front door. So I do come from a running background, but not a competitive one. So even now as a professional trail runner, it's still really foreign for me. Like when my coach prescribes me to do workouts, I'm like, can you explain this to me? I don't really know what to do. I'm used to just like going out in the mountains and playing. So
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So it doesn't look like we have any more questions. Feel free to ask more questions. We still have 5 minutes left if either of you have any questions for each other or anything like that. This has been great. I've really enjoyed listening to this, like dwelling in the shadows of being like, oh my God, this is so
Yeah,
cool.
exactly. You've asked such good questions. And I have a question for you. When do you aim to end your 50? Well, I guess tell us what you are doing right now so everyone knows.
So yeah, so I want to finish the 50 states and then run Kona Ironman. I've had my eye on that and I kind of began training for it last summer, but finish the 50 states within the year and a half. And then eventually run across America, try and do that. But yeah, it's been a really fun journey. And what do you think about being an author? Like, isn't we go from like running to like, to me, this is a totally foreign world. And how was your experience? Would you write another book or,
Honestly, I mean, so it is. It's like it was incredibly difficult, um, and incredibly rewarding. For me, it was very cathartic writing, and I think writing is such a unique expression, and it's a way to kind of create this community. I don't know if you felt that way.
yeah.
Yeah, like, having people read it, and then like I loved you sharing your experiences as you read the book. Like that just like literally every time I read those things like warmed my heart. And so being able to just like feel like you're kind of creating this bigger, broader community, through running, based on running, but also through this different kind of means, which is writing. Yeah, it's like a crazy world. It's like, yeah, we could say we're fellow
Yeah.
authors. It's so
Like,
strange.
and then the one question I totally forgot to ask you, what are you running? What sneakers?
Oh, wait, what? What?
What sneakers do you run in? I totally forgot to ask that.
Oh, so actually, I actually spent the last year in France developing some new shoes for the North Face. So yeah, so the North Face is like coming out. They've come out with some new shoes called the Vective, and so they're like kind of taking the trail world by storm. And so I've been able to run in those and some different prototypes. Yeah, so those are the ones. Some like nice protective trail shoes with some nice lugs on it because I like to run in the mountains. So
Yeah, makes sense.
yeah.
Nice. So Julia has another question. Becca, she wants to know if your daughter is a runner or if she's like, no, that's mom's thing, and I hate that.
So I asked her one day, how come you don't like to run? And I think it was the sweating part for her. She said, well, she was very young. She was like 4. And she was like, the sweating part is tough for me. But she has asthma actually really bad. She's on a steroid inhaler. I don't know how my child has asthma, but she does. And so I've always coached her soccer team for the last 10 years. And so she's a goalie. So it's very fun I used to also play soccer, college and soccer. So I kind of wail on her now, and it's kind of getting harder and harder to score on her, but she's a soccer player.
You never know. Running, yeah.
Yeah, could happen.
Yeah. You run in my family or you don't? You're like runners over here and the non-runners over here.
We have another question. This one is from Donna. Hi, Donna. She says, thank you both so much. I admire your attitude, energy, and honesty. Do you have a different relationship to your body after your accident?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And there's definitely a chapter in there that's kind of about this, just kind of celebrating the strength that I had. And running is an expression of that for me, of, I need to not, take care of my body in order to, do these incredible things. And, also I had to be so thankful for, my physical strength that it kind of saved my life that day. And yeah, so I have a lot of scars. People, they're still quite visible. Like there's a scar on my leg that looks like a bear just kind of like took his claws and, said hello. And like there's still actually, some people stare, but mostly it's like, kids, because they're just curious and they can't help it. And every now and again, but it's obvious that something happened. I have like scars all over my body. And I think about it as, something I can see every day to remember. And it's just kind of, I view it as just kind of it's now part of me. And it's there as a reminder, not like in a sense of sadness, but in kind of a celebration of, okay, yeah, my body's resilient and this is what I'm capable of. And it's just kind of a new respect and listening to it more. And, my how I train is now different than I did before. And so just kind of being patient with that process and letting my body, tell me what it needs and me actually listening to it.
I love that.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
We have one more question from Mary. She says, what keeps you two ladies motivated and inspired other than your great love for the sport?
Ooh. Okay, I have to say it. It's just so, like, I need to find more bugs. I need to see like more animals on the trail. It's like that's a really good motivation just to see the world and see nature, but especially like the little teeny creatures that we always forget about. I always love it that I get to, it's like this whole new, again, cue the Disney music, like a whole new world to explore. Like every time I go out on the trails, it's just my favorite thing.
Yeah, I love to run and I love to travel. So I feel fortunate to be doing the things that I absolutely love. And I love seeing the world, doing what I love. I feel lucky for that. So you find your inspiration behind every workout and every run, and that will get you through it.
Great. Well, I think that's a great point to end on.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much for being here. Thank you both so much for sharing your wonderful story, Hillary and Becca. You asked such wonderful questions. Um, thank you both so much. And thank you everyone for coming and watching. We had a great time.
Yeah, thanks. And here's, you can pick her book up in your store still, right?
Yes, yes. I have dropped both of the links to purchase both of their books in the chat window. So if you feel like buying either of their books, and please do, they're there and they're also on our website. So
Yeah.
thank you. Thanks,
Thank you guys
everyone.
so much. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.